It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I'm excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Guy Nirpaz, co-founder and CEO of Tutango, a company that provides a customer success management platform. You know, as the economy turns more and more to recurring revenue or subscription models for software and services sales, focusing resources on the success of your customers and using and deriving value from the product you sell to them is rapidly evolving from something to which lip service was sort of paid to. I mean, I worked for a company, my first company in my career, the CEO's theory of customer success was, keep the customer surly but not rebellious. And it's really evolved into something now. It's really an essential part of every business, especially, like I said, in the subscription model. So managing, nurturing, supporting, and succeeding with your customers, and really reducing churn is a major driver of revenue growth. And we're going to talk about that today with my guest, Guy Nirpaz. Guy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andy. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So take a minute, fill out the introduction about yourself.
Cool. My name is Guy Nirpaz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tutango. I now live in San Francisco Bay Area, where the Tutango headquarters in San Mateo. I'm originally from Israel. I've spent most of my days in Tel Aviv. And I've started Tutango in 2010 to help companies tackle the challenge of customer success. Through the years, of course, there's been a lot of learning that I'm sure we're going to touch on. I'm married, 3 kids, and having a lot of fun in this amazing times of the industry.
So did you come over in 2010 from Israel?
No, we actually started the company in 2010 in Israel, and we still have the engineering team in Tel Aviv, where the key talent is. And I've started go-to-market operations in the Bay Area in 2012.
So how's that transition been for you?
It's been great. I mean, from a business perspective, that was the right decision to make. I'm happy that I'm experiencing new types of cultures and businesses, and that my family is exposed to that. We see ourselves as citizens of the world, and this is it's very exciting for us.
Oh, good. So family and kids are enjoying being in California.
Yes, they do. And they also would like to go back to Tel Aviv, but,
Home is home, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, perfect. So where'd the name for Tutango come from? I mean, I think I know, but why don't you explain it?
Yeah, so the name is It Takes Two to Tango. And basically the idea is that when we're dealing with, when companies are now selling subscription or pay-as-you-go models, they have to make sure that they are in sync with their customers. Because customers now have choice, and it's easy to get on new systems, and so it's very easy to get off those systems. So companies really need to be in lockstep with their customers. So that's Tutango.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was even looking at it from a slightly different perspective, which is the expression here, especially when two parties are disputing, who originated a particular problem. Yeah, at the end of the day, if you both admit that, we both had some involvement in creating this problem, the expression is, it takes two to tango, right?
Yeah,
so
I agree. But we were thinking about the more positive connotation of the.
Well, the thing is that I just bring it up because that so often applies when you're in a customer service situation. Customers calling and, hey, we've got a problem. It needs to be fixed. You guys aren't moving fast enough, and so on and so forth. Instead, you get all this finger pointing. It's like at the end of the day, yeah, we both had some involvement in that. So for people who are aren't in the SaaS space or the subscription services space and listening to the show, explain what the customer success function is today.
Cool. So let me step back a little bit and talk about the origins of customer success. Why there's a new thing called customer success. And it's actually very simple. We've seen a tremendous shift in the business model where companies are selling their services in subscription, right? So that's a subscription pay as you go. And the reason that they do it is because this is what their clients expect them to do. Customers now want to have choices. So their
Well,
business...
and the technology enables it as well in a way it didn't before, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the main thing is, or one of the things is recurring revenue. The second thing is, of course, the digital nature of new businesses where you actually can distribute very easily solutions across the web, and it's very easy to consume.
Right.
And together, what it does is actually makes great business model for consumers and businesses to look on the web and then find a solution, subscribe to it, and start using it immediately. But at the same time, it's also very easy for them to drop off the solution. And the role of the customer success strategy of a company and the customer success organization is to proactively impact the customer lifetime value, proactively ensure that customers do not churn, and proactively ensure that they retain and they grow. And there's all sorts of strategies that they need to deploy in order to actually be successful at that.
So I'm wondering, in this whole customer success evolution within the subscription and pay-as-you-go business, I would think that people went back and studied the history of the premium channels and cable, which were subscription business with a high degree of churn. I mean, we're talking high double-digit churn virtually every month. Were there a lot of lessons that people took from that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of our drivers for the idea was actually the telco industry. We've been paying for telco services, whether it's data, voice, content, like the cable business. These companies have realized that this is a major part of their business. I mean, the statistics shows that in mature subscription businesses, there's more money to be made from your existing customers than from new customers. And when companies want to grow or even sustain their business, they need to pay attention. And I guess the key lessons learned from that point of view, and I think in that regard there was even less choice, is the importance of value, right? So at the end of the day, because people have choice to cancel, what companies need to make sure is that they are creating value and ever ongoing value to their customers that will motivate them to keep within the service. Because subscription is not free, and there is a decision that the subscriber is making every time that they need to repay for the subscription. In order to counter this decision, they basically, what goes in their head is it worth it? Am I going to continue using it or not? And the only counter for that is, are they actually getting value from their services?
Yeah, and you use a statistic on your website that 82% of revenue, I think it was 82% revenue, comes from existing accounts.
Yes, exactly. I was saying that the bigger you become, it becomes 70, 80, and even 90% of your existing revenue comes from your existing customers. And this is what makes customer success a big thing today, because with the proliferation of thousands and tens of thousands of subscription businesses and services today, both in consumer and in the B2B space, this problem becomes paramount in the business model or challenge, and companies are trying to kind of figure out a way to do it. Now, when of course, I was saying proactively impacting customer lifetime value, but you also need to think about the cost of it. So this is where they need to start thinking of how do they actually become in front of the problem. How do they make sure that what they do is actually impacting, and how do they do it in a way that is scalable and doesn't take all of the profit just to retain a customer.
Right. So, I mean, part of the thought is that using systems that are data-driven, give you some predictive analysis capabilities into what the customer is doing and the usage patterns and various touch points that have, is that you can, as you said, sort of be ahead of the curve with that and anticipate problems, and then maybe not need as big of a team that's manning the phones answering questions.
That is true. That is true. I mean, data-driven approach is. I mean, you mentioned that it's the proliferation of technology and digital services, and one of the advantages of digital services is that they leave a usage footprint, and this usage footprint could be used in order to determine if a customer is actually happy, what they do and what they actually don't do, and how often they do it, and how deep they do it in the product is a very good indication of the value they're getting, right? If I'm subscribed to Netflix and I'm watching a movie once a month, it does tell Netflix something about my probability to retain as a long-term customer. And if I'm watching Netflix a few hours a day, like my kids, right? Then obviously there's very low likelihood that I'm going to cancel because there's value in the service. Yes, the digital footprint is giving you a lot of information to get ahead of it.
So within organizations that you're seeing that have set up customer success teams, seems to be sort of a fair amount of variability in terms of how they're structured and where they report within the organization. So for managers that are listening and CEOs and so on, what are you seeing as sort of best practices to where customer success fits within the organization? In some cases, I know they report directly to the CEO. Other times, part of sales. Other part, sales ops. I mean, it seems to have varied.
Yes, that is true, and I mean, you talk a lot about in your show about methods of sales and the way people should structure their organization and the way they should actually build the machine of sales. And I'm referring to customer success as yet another machine that the organization needs to think about. Mm-hmm. The first part of this machine, even before determining where they should sit, is to define the goals of customer success. And the goals should be all about dollars, should be all about revenue, right? I mean, the goal of the customer success organization is the revenue from existing customers. And this is how they should be measured. And the reason why this is important, because this aligns the entire organization to actually take the right actions in order and determine the right priorities. Now, from a reporting perspective, again, customer success, or if we look at the customer journey and the customer success processes or activities that are relevant, I would, at very broad stroke, would categorize them into 4 stages within the customer cycle. Onboarding is to get ramping new customers. Nurturing is what you do with your existing customers. Renewal is the transaction that you run once every year, every month to renew a customer, and upsell when customer determines that they want to buy more out of you. I mean, the modern organization that I'm seeing are putting customer success leadership under the CEO or under the COO, but some of them own onboarding and nurturing. Some of them own all the cycle: onboarding, nurturing, renewal, upsell. And it's very much dependent on, I guess, a little bit the type of product that they sell and also the maturity of the organization, whether it's organization that is going through from a transition from a different licensing model to recurring revenue model, or it's a fresh new organization that decides that there is the team that's responsible to land accounts and there's a team that is responsible to grow accounts over time. Okay.
So what are the biggest challenges that customer success teams are facing right now?
I would say that the biggest challenge right now is that they're very much misunderstood within their organizations. A lot of CEOs and executives don't really understand the difference between support, service, account management, customer success. And for that reason, I would problem, I would suggest a little bit of a customer-facing thinking. Let's look at the reasons for retention or churn or upsell, and define that as outcomes, right? So if a customer renews or churns, this is an outcome. And then let's look at the drivers. And once organizations realize that there are drivers and outcomes, the drivers are all the things that you do in onboarding or nurturing to make sure that customers get value. So by the time they need to make a decision with regards to renewal or growth, they're ready to do so. And once organization starts to understand that, and they don't wait for the customers to report on problems, but they want to get ahead of it, and they are starting to adopt the customer success mindset as a team. Because I mean, if we're looking at drivers, if we want customers to get value from the product, it's not just a team that is doing it or a customer success team. Sometimes it's product, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's sales as well. But this mindset of drivers and outcomes is what really determines whether an organization is going to move quickly on the path for customer success.
Yeah, and you talk about CEOs that it sounds like what you're saying is that it's almost a little bit old fashioned. Like some of the CEOs are still thinking about support as a cost center rather than something that drives revenue.
That's true. I think the difference between there's one thing that I usually kind of use is what's the operational model of customer success, right? Because sometimes people think, you know what, it's basically like sales, so let's use a pipeline model. And how do we determine the pipeline? We will look at renewal date and subtract 45 days, and This is our pipeline for renewal. The challenge with that is that by the time customers get to renewal, it is already determined if they're going to renew or not. So you're not really proactive. You're just trying to run a process, but without any ability to impact its outcome. Some people think about customer success that are coming from different backgrounds. It's basically project management. Let's, onboard new customers, which is true. Onboarding actually is a project, but what happened post-onboarding? What do you do? Do you wait for renewal, or do you do some more things as well? Some people think it's just account management. Let's call in to customers and get their feedback. This is not very scalable today. Or like what you just suggested, it's a support organization. We'll wait for the customer to tell us that they're not happy, and we will solve their problem when they call. The problem with that is 90% of the customers are never going to call you.
Yeah, they're just going to change when they're unhappy when the time comes. Yeah,
exactly. So they will make the decision to churn way before their contract ends. Right? They will go and do something else. So at the heart of it, customer success is a practice of portfolio management. You have many customers at different stages with different needs, and the challenge of customer success team is to figure out who needs their attention, what do they need, and how could they support them in order to maximize renewals and upsell. And this shift in thinking, which requires companies to really think from the customer lenses. When does the customer really make the decision to continue, right? They don't make this on the day of renewal. They make it way before that.
Well, it's just like it's just like sales in general, and decisions made way before the word is given to you as a vendor.
That is very, very true. And if your business is dependent on your ability to retain customers, you really need to take control over this process. You cannot wait for customer to make a decision, notify you, and by then, you know if you're going to grow or shrink, right? You really want to impact that. This is why I said in the beginning that it is proactively kind of getting ahead of it, impacting lifetime value, right? You do want to impact that. You don't want to sit and wait. And sometimes that involves product changes or pricing changes, but a lot of that also needs to be controlled by someone who owns revenue from existing customers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think back to I was a project manager at one point in my career, helping onboard customers, large complex systems, not software as a service type systems, but to your point, it's like, everything we learned was sort of after the fact. Right, and oftentimes it's so anecdotal too, because the customer didn't have as much data on hand. And now, you talk about your system. We're gonna get into it here in just a second. Is you can track as you said, you can track really the customer through their usage patterns, whether they're happy or not, the specific data about problems they may be having, adoption issues, which are huge, especially on the software side. If you bring on a new system and no one's using it, that's problematic, and you get information about that just didn't exist before.
Yeah, and this is really the true transformation of the digital age and digital businesses and cloud services as well. When in the era that when you and I deployed on-premise systems, we wanted to have this information, but we couldn't. Right? It was
No.
like on customers' premise. Was their information. And now we're seeing a lot of companies, a lot of our clients are using this information to provide a much better experiences and services to their customers. There's this kind of an anecdotal idea. We've had this new product feature which we call Success Beat, and it's basically ability to send weekly email to your customer about their usage. Right? I mean, this is what I mean, and many great companies are doing that. Right? I mean, they're sending you what you're saying, how you use the product, and what other options you have to use it in the next few weeks, and so forth. And I had this conversation with several CEOs of SaaS companies that didn't want to use it. They didn't want to expose to their customers how they're using or not their service. And their rationale was, if they will know, they may cancel. and my rebuttal to them was, yes,
of course.
they will eventually know, so you might as well want to encourage them to take advantage of what they have, because they will cancel, whether or not you want to tell them that, or you want to know with them. So for that reason, I think this availability of data and transparency of data that is available for the vendor and for the customer as well is something that could be used to motivate people to take advantage of what they have. Right? If I don't know that I have it, I may not use it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you think about the case of those CEOs you were talking about. It's like, okay, there was a reason the customer bought your service or your software in the first place, right? And so if they're not using it and they're not getting the value out of it, then that's a problem somewhere. You're much better off fixing it proactively, because it certainly is going to ripple through the rest of your customer base.
Exactly. And it's just getting better and better in the sense that the things that we can learn about customers, I think kind of now I'm seeing more and more companies using the data as their source of innovation, right? They're finding patterns of use cases and adoption of their product that they haven't thought before.
Right.
And this gives them as an opportunity to innovate in new products or new packages or just having better customer base and happier customer base, and just continue to innovate. And that does not replace the anecdotal customer feedback, but there's value in it because it covers 100% of your customers,
right.
100%. And if you go with a survey model, you have 10% of your customer base, and the vocal ones and the ones that care enough to tell you what they think. Most of them don't. So people are busy. So that gives companies great opportunities. And we've seen that companies in the consumer world, the greatest companies in the world, like Google and Facebook and LinkedIn, are the companies that are using data to validate or help them determine their hypothesis about the value that they're providing to their customers, and using that as part of the cycle of innovation and value delivery to their customers.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Tutango for a second. So you sort of have three main categories you say you're really helping people with, in driving adoption, reducing churn, and increasing upsell. So let's start with adoption. And what's where's your role in that, in terms of what your system does to help drive adoption and onboarding of the product?
Sure. So at a very high level, I would say that Tutango was built. Its foundation is on customer and user monitoring system. So we basically connect our customers connect their systems to Tutango, and every time a user is using a product, it reports an information to Tutango, and this builds over time a very rich user models and account models that are being updated in real time, right? And because it's a time-based system, if someone uses the product today or not, it updates the model. And on top of that, there are a set of applications that enable you to use this information to drive the necessary outcomes that you're looking for. So in the case of adoption, it really gives you multiple dimensions of adoption, right? Which companies are using a product and which are not, and in which frequency, and what they do when they use your product, and are they using the stickiest features that you have or not, and changes and trends over time and so forth. And what our customers are doing with that, they're getting this information. They're building all sorts of programs to drive adoption. Programs could be introducing new capabilities to their clients, or welcoming new users from an organization. When new users start to use, they guide them through what's available and how they can best use the product, or guiding people to use the features that are meaningful and they're not being used. And because they're able to know who's using it and who's not, and in which level and so forth, they can target the communication, the message, to drive the right outcome. And the way it's being measured is whether or not the campaign or the engagement actually got people to adopt the product in further ways. Are the metrics of daily active use or monthly active use or usage frequency or usage of specific features, have they improved on the segment that you were targeting? And we're seeing amazing results in that regard, because in many cases, as you mentioned, people buy product because they have a business problem. Now they need to translate it into how you're actually using it, and are you aware of everything that happens? And we talked about digital products. The rate in which companies add value to their products is very, very fast. Many companies release features every 2 weeks or every month or so. You can't expect customers to really keep pace with what you have. And in many cases, there's a cycle in which you need to introduce this to them at the right timing so they take advantage of the value. And this is a very positive cycle that we had the ability to monitor what they do versus what you have to offer them, and being able to impact that by communicating to them, training them, and so forth. We're seeing adoption improvements across the base.
Which then obviously leads to upsells.
Yes. So upsell, the challenge with upsell, or let me put it differently. I think every customer goes through a journey, right? They subscribe, they go through an onboarding period in which they need to get the first value. The first value is actually the initial promise has been delivered.
Right.
And then you want to make sure that they are continuously using the product or continuously getting the value. And for that reason, we call this period nurturing. And once a period, customer renews and goes back to nurturing, or they get to a point where they're eligible for a higher version of the product. So upsell is basically intuitive or natural progression of value that's being delivered before. And if we look at business models, it's either people buying more seats because their team has grown, or they want to deploy the service to other parts of their organization. So that's upsell. Or upsell could be that they have maxed out the capacity and they want to buy some more capacity. Or upsell could be their added value capabilities that now that they understand the basics, they realize that they need some more. So everything that you do in the nurturing leads up to this upsell capabilities. And a lot of that is just making sure that there is a constant improvement in the consumption of a service to get to a point of an upsell. And from a technical perspective, Tatango enables, because of the monitoring capabilities, enables our customers to identify those clients that are meeting or close to the threshold on whatever dimension we talked about: capacity, utilization, adoption, and engage with them in an upsell cycle.
So who's your ideal client profile?
Our ideal client profile is a company that has a lifetime value business, recurring revenue business, across the range, anywhere from very young startup companies with tens of customers and a few $1 million in annual run rate, to enterprise businesses that are deploying their new subscription models, who need to actually build the process around the customer journey from the time they subscribe and onwards. We're seeing a very wide range right now. Enterprise customer, mid-market companies, and also young companies who realize that they adopt the subscription economy, they adopt the subscriber-focused mentality, and they're building a strategy around how to make sure that customers are retained and grow over time.
And new customers, where do they typically experience the ROI first?
So I think the first thing is, it sounds obvious, but it's visibility. People want to impact lifetime value, but they don't know where to focus. Mm-hmm. So once they connect the data streams into the Tango, all of a sudden they see a view of, their entire customer base, all of their subscribers, red, yellow, green, who's in a good shape, who's not, where they're at, just mapping out the customer base. And I call this portfolio scorecard, looking at their portfolio and getting the scorecard of, where things are working well, where not. So now they can start focusing on, really start improving what needs to be improved. I think in many cases in the beginning, they just don't know.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. And I think this concept that the metaphor you used of the portfolio management is really a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree. And so, there's some obviouses, right? Now we know over time that, the period of onboarding is critical, and the time keeping the momentum and getting customers to first value during onboarding is very, very critical. Making sure that you're touching base with your customers about value, nurturing them repeatedly all across the organization, the decision makers, the economic buyer, the users. You really need to look at that. So there are some obvious ideas, but really where do you need to focus first is hard. And then the follow-up values of Tatango is actually, once you identify the areas that you want to improve on, is to apply the process, build the engagement plan and the engagement tools to actually engage with your customers, whether through your people or directly with the end users, in order to continuously drive value and get them to a point of success. Even in cases where you need to identify escalations because before they become non-reversible, irreversible.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to move to the last segment of the show where I have some standard questions I ask all my guests. And the first one is a hypothetical scenario I pose is that put yourself in this, imagine that you now are just been hired by a company as their new sales leader, and because their sales have stalled out and they need to get things turned around really quickly. So challenge for you is coming in as a new leader. What would you do in the first week? What two things would you do in the first week that could have the biggest impact?
To me, I want to know, why do customers buy? What is the promise that is being sold to them? And secondly, go to the customer base and figure out, what is the value they're actually getting. Being able to understand this gap or understand, these perspectives will enable me to define the first 90 days of sales. Okay,
great answer. Very concise. Rapid fire questions for you. You can give me a one-word answer. You can elaborate as much as you want. So, you've obviously been out. You've been selling Tatango. When you're selling, what's your strongest sales asset?
I think I'm very authentic because I'm very passionate about the customer success space. And I really like working with our customers and understand their problems from their perspective and share with them best practices that I've heard from others and, thoughts and insights that we've learned through the years in Tatango. Mm-hmm. So the authenticity is really a key for me.
When you came from a technical background before you started Tatango and don't know how much sales experience you had, but as you started selling more and more, who'd you look to as your sales role model?
I've been working with great salespeople. I had a good friend and a great sales guy that in my previous company in New York, with the directness and immediacy and killer instincts. I've seen the West Coast salespeople as well. I don't have any particular person I'm picking and choosing the areas that I like from other people. I would also say that although I haven't been a sales leader before, one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing today, I've always worked with customers. Projects, engineering. Even when I was an architect at Mercury Interactive, I was once a quarter in the U.S. talking to customers. Before I moved here, no matter where I worked, once a quarter in the market, that was always for me. So I learned that the best insight for where you need to go is with your customer base. So,
okay,
I'm a customer's person.
Next question then for you is, what's one book every customer success manager should read?
That's a good one. Farm, Don't Hunt. That's a new book I'm working on. It's already available on Amazon for pre-order.
That's your book. Okay.
Yeah, that's my book for the practical guide for customer success leaders. A lot of the ideas that we've talked today, organized in a very nice way by my co-writer, Fernando Pizarro, and myself. But others that I've used is I like Inside Out. Outside In. This is the term, Outside In. This is a great book on customer success. It allows people to think about the world from the eyes of their customers and not from the eye of their internal business processes and organization. And it made a great impression on me.
All right. Well, I want to make sure I get a copy of your book. So this is a tough question. The toughest one I ask you most today is what music's on your playlist these days?
That's actually very easy for me because I'm playing in a band with a couple of CEOs and VPs of customer success. So we have our Spotify playlist.
Yeah. So what do you cover when you play?
So I can read it to you.
Okay. That's best answer yet.
Yeah. So we play Back on the Chain Gang, we play Learn to Fly, we play Under Pressure, we play Shelter.
All right. So sort of a mix. You got some sort of classic stuff in there.
Yeah, 70s, 80s rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
So what's the last question for you is, what's the first sales activity that you do every day? The first sales activity that I do every day, I look at my deals and customer to-do list that I keep. I have my Evernote to-do list around customers and prospects, and I see who do I owe what, and take care of that. Excellent. Well, good. Well, I want to thank you for joining me. My guest today has been Guy Nirpaz. Guy, how can people find out more about Tatango? Yeah, just head to our website, www.tatango.com. I also want to encourage everyone to come to the 4th Annual Customer Success Summit on the 21st, 22nd of March in San Francisco. It's a gathering of many, over 1,000 customer success professionals. We've been doing this for the 4th year. It's an industry event bringing together the best minds in customer success so people can hang out, learn, change notes, and learn more. Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining me. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And subscribing to this podcast is a great way to do that, because then you won't miss any of our conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Guy Nirpaz, who share their expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.